Welcome everyone to another episode of Kiwi Talks. My guest today is probably best known for his Doom type remixes of games, but he's recently composed 4 games such as Atomic Heart and Viscerafest. He has had a meteoric rise over the years, which has been cool to follow. I'd like to welcome Geoffrey Day. How you doing, man?
Hello. Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to chat.
Yeah, so first question I want to know is how did the whole thing happen with Mundfish and Atomic Heart, right? Because you got an email out of nowhere, I'm guessing,
Ye-
summer 2022.
Yes, it was completely out of nowhere. Actually, what's really funny is I thought they were spam at first. I put them through the ringer because when you work with somebody, especially a company in the early days, they want you to sign a bunch of stuff like NDAs and things just to make sure that like you're good to go. But the amount of information that you need to send, the amount of personal information you need to send in order to make sure that all those things are legally compliant was a little bit too much for me at the beginning. And I was talking to a person who seemed like they worked at Mundfish, but because everybody has that nobody was really using Facebook or anything. So I couldn't find them online. And I was like, is this person real? Like they seem real. They seem nice. They're responsive. They have a little signature in their email. The company is real, but I can't find their name anywhere. And I was like, am I about to be bamboozled and like have my identity stolen? So I put them through the ringer. It took like a couple days, and eventually I got connected directly to an HR person. They were on LinkedIn. Everything was good. And I was like, okay, we can do this. And then I got going, and I was just like, sorry, thank you for letting me do that, but better safe than sorry. I don't regret it because at the end of the day the project worked out fine, and they were willing to, they didn't give up on me. They were like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. Like, what do you need? And it worked out for the best. But yeah, it really did. It came out of nowhere, and I had a hard time believing it was real because why would it?
Why would they
I
contact
didn't think
you?
anybody like that. Yeah, me in particular. Like, I had just done Viscerafest, so like I didn't think that was a straight line connection, and it wasn't. But I was just like, this doesn't make sense. So I just had to protect myself early, but it is what it is. I get a lot of spam, I'm sure other creators can agree, a lot of fake collaboration emails and things. So you just you got to double check your sources and stuff.
So how many would you get on a daily, like fake requests?
Oh, 5, 6 a day. They just
Really?
change the email. You can't block them because the email addresses keep changing. So it's just like it's the same template format every single time. I'm sure if you were to take this clip of me saying that and I describe this email and you post it on Twitter, I'm sure people will be like, oh yeah, totally, I get these all the time. Like it's just a format, and I know they're fake now. I'm just so used to it. But anytime something real comes through, I'm like, I'm not sure if they've like up to their game. You know what I mean? So I just have to be careful.
That makes me wonder if a lot of people I reach out to, because obviously I get a lot of no replies, and I'm wondering, I'm like, do they think that I'm spam or it goes into their spam folder? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think so. The thing is like your emails don't look like spam. Like it's very obvious because things don't match up in the spam emails. But yours are, I mean, it's you, your name is on everything, you have a signature. Like that's what I look for. And that's the reason I gave Mundfish a chance, is because everything checked out, except I couldn't find them online. And I was like, maybe I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that one. It's like it's different. I have expectations as an American working a lot with like American companies and kind of what I think I should be seeing, but like I can't say the same for everybody across the world in terms of what they think, appearing professional in their spaces and stuff. So like I just have to take things with a grain of salt. But the important part is that they were a real person. So that's all that matters.
Yeah, that is all that matters. So what was the direction that they gave you? Because obviously, did you have to do a demo first? Did they ask you to submit a demo?
No, actually,
Really?
they reached out to me directly. So the part of and I learned, now that we're seeing the volume 1 soundtrack out, the number of different artists that are on there sort of, I'm sure it's the same story with all of them, which is, as far as I understand it anyway, they reached out to artists that they liked the sound of, and they asked them, hey, we would love for you to do something for our soundtrack. You already do things that we like. And so that was sort of what happened with me, is they reached out to me and they said, just like any of the other artists on the soundtrack, they said, we have these songs that we would love to have artists remix, and we'll put them in the game, and we like the stuff that you do you want to do a couple of these? And I said, yeah, sure. So I turned around a couple, and that was the whole thing. They didn't really give me, I don't think there was any intention to be like, here's the style that we want you to do it in. It's more like, be aware it's going to be in the game, but we already like what you do. So like, we're not too worried about you turning around something that doesn't agree with our taste, because we already decided we like your music. So that was freeing, but also probably the most nerve-wracking experience ever, because I want it to fit in the game. I want it to make sense. And I had heard trailers and I heard some other stuff, so I kind of had to use that as reference. But they gave me essentially totally free reign of like how I wanted to approach it, which I think is good and bad.
Yeah, because there's some stuff that's original that you've written, and then there's some stuff that's remixed of like Russian songs, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did they give you a list and then you pick them, or how does it
Yes.
work in terms of the stuff that you remixed? So you just got given a list of Russian songs, and
Pretty
then
much.
yeah.
Yeah. So for the most part, from what you hear, almost all the songs that I heard on the soundtrack, I had already seen in that list. So I kind of, when we first started talking, they had approached me and they were like, we already know what songs we've licensed. These are the songs that we are going to probably use. And, pick which ones you think you want to remix. And what's really funny is I didn't know any of the songs. I didn't know who the artists were. I didn't know how famous any of the songs were. I just picked songs I liked. Right. And it's so funny because this is a hindsight thing. After I picked the first couple of songs, I picked like 2 or 3. I remember being in the meeting and I was talking to the director, Rob, and he just goes, interesting, you picked those. And it was like Trava Udoma and some of the other like super famous songs. And I'm like, I don't know, they sound good. Like it's I did some research later and I realized like, what they were about. But it was just funny. Like you can sort of sense that these songs are going to be popular by how they sound, even though I can't understand the lyrics, just the composition of stuff. I was like, these are just good songs. Some of these are really good. And then it's like, oh yeah, no, that's one of the most famous songs, actually. I'm like, oh, great. That
No
makes
pressure.
sense. Yeah, it's so strange.
Yeah, so with there's one track, I don't even know how you pronounce it. What is it? Zyvozdnoe Leto? I'm probably butchering that. Sorry to all the Russians. Yeah, but there was an original version, and then you dialed back a lot of the instruments, right? You took them out because it wasn't really working.
Right. Yeah. So that was pretty early on. That was like you heard that in the trailer. They had a long version of that in the trailer, and essentially what I did for all the remixes was I tried to start by removing the vocals from the original and then just rebuilding the entire instrumental. So it's the same vocals, totally different instrumental. There's no backing band from the original song. As we did it for the trailer, this was kind of like the one exception. As we did it for the trailer, there's this kind of natural pacing in the trailer where it starts off a little bit less actiony and then it sort of builds up into an action thing. And then at the very end, it gets like super loud. And there's a clip from a different song at the end of that. And I first did a version of the song that had no original instrumentation. It was like pretty electronic and stuff like that. And they kind of liked it. But then once it started getting into the trailer, it didn't fit the pacing as well. It was just kind of heavy and loud the whole time. And then also, there were some improvements that I felt I could make to the song just to get the vibe right. Because once I actually saw, this is like, I think the downside of doing things with no context at all is like, you just kind of take your best guess. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And this one sort of worked. So when I went back and kind of addressed it with the trailer, I now had some trailer footage. So when I went back and I did the trailer version, I tried to factor in some of the original in the beginning. And honestly, like the way that the original song sounds, it sounds pretty old school. Like it's mixed very old school. It's almost like an old record kind of sound, and everything's sort of just placed in a weird spot. And the instruments don't come through. It's not a very full mix. It's a very kind of sparse. This is the original song, very sparse and kind of light. It's supposed to be sort of like a summery song. It's called Starry Summer is like how it's literally translated. And it was kind of a pretty good vibe actually once I did like a half and half at the beginning. And then as it moves through the song, those pieces just start get taken out, as the verses kind of go through it. I replace things more with electronic parts, and then eventually we get to the end. And that's sort of the version that we ended up with at the in the soundtrack is the one that works with the trailer pacing. So it's got this natural buildup. With the pace of which we were doing these songs and the kind of the time limits that we had, maybe there was another way that we could have approached it for the soundtrack or outside of the trailer. But by the time the trailer song was finished and by the time we extended it, we were just kind of off and running. So we just said, okay, good. Sounds great. We'll use that later. You've got a bunch of other songs to do. Let's do those. And I think it sounds fine. People really like it, regardless of like maybe the way in which it was approached. As a perfectionist, I would want to change a million things, but you just have to accept it. It's on the soundtrack now. So
yeah. So how much time did you get between each song then?
Oh man. So when I first started working with them, I don't know if you remember this, but they put out a trailer that had like a release date that was sort of this bunch of asterisks. And it could have been November or could have been December or something like that.
That's right.
And let's assume the latest possible date, which is December, which is like most studios would probably opt for that. When I started working with them, it was already it was like, approaching fall, midsummer. And we started a conversation like, okay, how much time do you think I have? And they're like, well, you saw the release date, so everything is kind of an ASAP situation. And I was just like, okay, cool. So I ended up, in terms of pacing, turning around about a song every 10 days, I'd say. So almost every single one of those is like less than 2 weeks. Mix, master, done, chunked out for the game. I got really burnt out. Like that's not a pace you should have to sustain. But it was a limited number of tracks, and I really wanted to show my stuff and be on the soundtrack. I had no sense of how much other music would be in there. I just thought, well, they keep liking my music, I'm going to keep trying to work on the music. And if they want more stuff, I'll turn it around. And the release date is not too far away at first. And they, I just kept going. And, we turned around all these tracks. And then, of course, with that tight timing, there's always things where, they say you can't rush art, but like you can, but it's like with trade-offs, right? Like the trade-offs are, as I start moving very quickly, I find myself using some things that I've used in other projects, or I'm not templating stuff, but there's maybe some writing things that I'm like, I could have done that better, or I could have paid a little more attention to detail on this. At the end of the day, I don't think it mattered that much in the soundtrack, but it's more of a personal thing for me, which is like, if I had been given twice as much time, who knows what I could have done, right? But I know that I can turn it around quickly in that case. And if that's what they need from me, if they need me to turn things around super fast, I totally can. I just have to take a long break after, so I can kind of recover and get back to a normal pace.
Fair enough. Because did you do the mixing, or did Mick do the mixing and mastering? Like who did that? Do you know?
No, I think as far as I can tell, as I understand it, everyone on the soundtrack so far did their own mixing. And in the game, actually, I think a lot of the tracks are the original mixes. As far as I can tell anyway, from my music, the stuff that people are game ripping out sounds like the stuff that I sent them. So I'm guessing like, they took my mixes for my music anyway, and they were like, that sounds pretty good. So they put that in there, and then they're using, the audio interface, like the middleware, and they can probably make adjustments, and they've got stems and all that stuff. But in terms of the soundtrack, they did do their own mastering for the whole soundtrack, which is good because it's kind of like a nice consistent thing. So that's the extent of it. That's as far as I know for my own music. I can't speak for anybody else. I just know that that's what happened to mine.
Yeah. So did you reach out to Mick Gordon at any point for like sample overlap or anything?
So in terms of, I guess the two things are like, did I talk to Mick and did we work together? I had talked to Mick just briefly, and no, we did not work together. We actually didn't overlap in terms of the when we were working on music for the project, because I came in super late. The fast music stuff that I was doing, like that was just like the majority of the music that wasn't mine. It sounds like it was already sort of wrapped up. So no, we didn't overlap, and I hadn't heard any of his music until the release. So I didn't really have stuff to work with except for trailers and things. So again, it was all just kind of my best guess in terms of what I thought should match. And at the end of the day, after seeing stuff in the game, I think it sounds pretty good. I think it's for somebody who came in sort of blind and looked at the game and listened to the soundtracks, like I think it sounds okay. It doesn't sound like things are totally out of place or anything like that. So it's like good on them for picking the right folks and building a sound.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be honest because I didn't know you were on the project till late in the piece, right? So any
Yeah.
of the metal tracks, I just thought it was Mick. I mean, which is
Yeah.
testament to you, because I think that's still the case now. Some people are mistaking some of your stuff as Mick's.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. No, and that makes sense though. People have been asking me like, how do you feel about folks just mislabeling your songs? And I'm like, well, why wouldn't they? Because they don't know that I'm on the soundtrack, right? Like they Mick's name was on a lot of the marketing leading up to it. So it's kind of this natural, and of course, like he's coming off of the soundtrack with Doom, and people are sort of associating that heavy, electronic metal sound with the Mick Gordon music, and they were hoping to hear more on Atomic Heart. And so if anybody does any of that, that sounds even close, they're going to go, oh yeah, Mick crushed it. Right. Like, and that totally makes sense. And at the end of the day, I think some folks were, I hope anyway, were pleasantly surprised to see that it was my name. Now, people in my Patreon already knew because I keep a small circle, but like the wider community, while they're playing the game, there's no way that they would know. IGN and some of the other reviewers who did stuff before the soundtrack came out over and over, called out that boss fight with the heavy metal music. And they were like, this Mick Gordon soundtrack is awesome. And the Mick Gordon soundtrack is awesome, but that particular song was mine. Right. And I just think it's funny. But I don't know. I think it's a good, I look up to, as Mick's musicianship is something that he's just so far beyond anything that I can do. And I look up to him a lot. And so people, even though I think between like Mick and I, we know that we sound very different, but some folks may associate things a little bit closer, and making that mistake, I don't know, as somebody who looks up to Mick, it does feel good. But I just want those folks to know that like if Mick did it, it would be 10 times better. Like it's, I'm still a baby in this space. So
Well, I think you're being a bit humble about it, but I mean, I mistook it as Mick's, but when you see the subtleties, when you hear the subtleties, you can tell the difference between your two styles when you pay attention closely. Yeah. So it's good. So was there overlap with you working on Atomic Heart and Viscerafest? Any overlap, or
at first?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
dude,
I
that
was
must have
about
been brutal.
Yeah, well, it was brutal, and that's why I said I was kind of burning out because it's a situation where I'm in the middle of a project, right? And in a perfect world, I would like to say I can only do one project at a time because I think that's like a healthy pace. And I think the situation with Atomic Heart was special because, I knew Mick was on the soundtrack, and I'm a fan, and my whole community is a fan, and I didn't want to say no to it despite having another project, right? So when Viscerafest came up, I talked to the contact I was working with, Noah, and I was like, hey, I just got an email about this. I don't know if I can do both projects at the exact same time, but like maybe we can slow the pace down a little bit so I can figure out what's going on with them and whatever. And he was super nice about it and was like, sure, if you need to take a little bit of time, it's cool. We're on pace to release this in time or whatever. And it all sort of worked out for the best. But yeah, there was like, I would do a couple of tracks for Atomic Heart, and then I would like wait a week or two, and then I go back to Viscerafest, and I would knock out a few, a track or two from that, and I would sort of switch off. And then during the holiday, when did the Viscerafest thing come out? October? Oh, it was October. So yeah, so I was still a little bit early in Atomic Heart. So that was like the pace hadn't really started to ramp up yet, and luckily in Atomic Heart. So I would get slower replies and things like that. They weren't rushing to get the game out yet. And it gave me a little bit of time to switch between them. But yeah, context switching is really hard because I've got two totally different sounds, two different soundtracks, two sets of projects. So that was challenging. My mom's like, I haven't seen you in 6 months. I'm like, I know, like, I hope I'll be done with this soon. Yeah. I was a hermit for a while. Not something that you should do on a regular basis, but sometimes the opportunity comes knocking and you just have to make it work. And that's kind of what happened.
Yeah. Because do you get a bit of imposter syndrome at times where you're just like, I am not I'm not ready for this, or anything like that?
Yeah, well, I still, yeah, to this day, I still do all the time. A project I'm working on right now, that's not out yet. I'm listening to it and just going, this is dumb. Like people are gonna hate this, right? But like I don't know that, and I have to just get over that. I feel like that every time I do a cover of a song, I think that I haven't done a good enough job. I hear the purist, like the angel devil thing. Like one of them is a music purist, and they go, no, that's a terrible idea. Why would you ever make a song that sounds like that? Especially, I actually get real comments like that sometimes when I do. You know what it is? It's the FromSoft covers like Elden Ring and Bloodborne and stuff like that.
Ah, yeah.
Oh my, I make some people very angry by doing a metal version of that song, and it's or any of those songs, and I just think it's so funny. But I hear those voices echo in the back of my head when I'm working on anything. You know, like I have to sort of trust that sometimes the the mean tweets or the mean comments or things, or even people just having a negative reaction to something, oftentimes are a sort of loud minority. They're not
They are.
necessarily representative of everybody else. And I just try to keep that in mind. And I try not to make my personality and my life all about being accepted by other people, because I feel like that's not the most healthy way to go about it. Like if whether if a song does well or not, if people like it or not, if that determines if I feel like I deserve to take care of myself someday, like I feel like that's just a spiral downward. I have to sort of detach a little bit from the way that people choose or not choose to consume the music that I make. So and I'm still getting used to that. It's a very different life. I'm still trying to find healthy ways to balance, to be less worried about acceptance on the internet as somebody who has an audience. I don't think that's a skill that people just inherently have. I think they have to practice that, or I think they do anyway.
No, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of composers now, and they pretty much echo exactly what you're saying. They have the whole
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, and these are people that have been in the industry for years, right? And they're doing like all these massive games and stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't beat yourself up over it. I think it's very common. I think particularly
Yeah.
with creatives, I think we can be quite sensitive, particularly when you see a negative comment. Right, you could see like 30 positive comments, and then you see that one negative comment, and that will be the one that sticks with you.
Exactly. Yeah. It's bad. It's like it is unfair to all the nice folks who write nice comments, because I'm thinking about the negative one more, and I shouldn't. I should be trying to address all the positivity as much as possible. But that's not. It seems like that's not how human brains work, which is kind
No,
of bumming me out.
it's just human nature, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think as a species, I don't know if we'll ever adjust to the whole social media thing in terms of negative
No.
comments versus positive comments, but it is what it
No.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But some people probably don't know that you have a software engineering background and you're a people manager, which is
Yes.
quite different from what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yes.
was there any way to translate some of that stuff into the musical space that you're in?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. So the specific background was I was a software engineer and a software engineering lead for quite a few years. And then I moved into being a product manager, which is basically just telling software engineers what they should be working on. And various sizes of companies, some pretty large companies, and right before I moved into music, I was in a pretty small company. And I'd say the stuff that I had to get over pretty quickly, which I took with me into my music career, was I had to kind of dial down the perfectionism quite a bit, because you can't delegate and trust other people on your team if you are too much of a perfectionist, because you want to micromanage everybody. You're afraid that if you give someone work, they're not going to do as good enough job as you will do, even though you don't have a good reference for if you're doing a good job or not. It's mostly you're just afraid that you can't control the situation.
Yeah.
And I had to learn how to not do that. As a hands-on, I guess, creator in this case of code, but something like that. And so that was one. It's like kind of just trusting the process, trusting the people, trying to understand where they come from as team players. And that it helped me. I think it helped me in my social life a lot too, because I could just relax. Like it's a better just skill to be able to just trust people on a more regular basis, and only react when something goes wrong, as opposed to assuming the worst. Which I think that's made my life better that way. And then actually, took a note about this. Oh yeah. So the second thing is that I have, especially the product management role, I realize that people don't always see stuff the way that you see it, even if you explain it. And that can be kind of challenging if you're trying to work together on something. This is just good for collaboration in general. It's like if you have a vision and you say, hey, I want you to do this part of this vision that I have, even if you explain everything down to a T, they're probably still not going to give you back what you imagine. And so trying to either show things instead of talking about it, or maybe just being like, whatever they want is actually my vision now, absorbing, like making it collaborative on purpose. And again, like avoiding that micromanagement stuff. I think that has been really helpful. And I've done a bunch of collaborations on my YouTube channel, and I just have to remember that, working with Bana, or working with the Maniac Agenda, or working with Alex Rowe I just did, or David Levy. Like all of those people have their own way of doing something. And even if I'm the one who arranges the song, it's really not up to me to decide what they think is best. And once they do something that they think is best, unless there's something technically wrong with it or something that makes it impossible to continue working, I say, yes, this is good. This is their contribution. They know better than me in this case. And, I'm going to put it together and make it sound the best I can. And that's stuff that I think directly came from working with folks in a non-musical way. The whole goal is to get things done.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Fair enough. Do you sometimes wonder what would have happened if COVID had never hit? Because that's part of the reason why you ended up doing what you're doing, right? You had a bit of downtime during COVID because of all the lockdowns. Do you think you still would have ended up on this path?
No, probably not.
Really?
I think the part that was lucky for me, it didn't feel lucky at the time because during COVID, I was unemployed for most of that year. And I was just burning cash because, I didn't have a job. I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is an incredibly expensive town because I used to work in tech. And I was just like, I've got some time and everything's locked down and I can't apply for jobs or anything. So I don't know. I'll just make some music, stay sane, figure something out. And if you go back in my YouTube catalog, it's all Final Fantasy remixes
right.
in different styles. And at that point, I didn't really know what my angle was. I didn't know what people wanted to hear. I didn't know what I was interested in. I just was experimenting with a bunch of stuff. And I was doing a song a week. I had nothing else to do. I was just doing it full time. And without that process, without that discovery process, I wouldn't have had, I think, two very important things happen. The first is I wouldn't have tried enough styles to ever get to seeing that people liked the metal stuff the most, which I didn't expect because I just assumed orchestral, that orchestral or like some lighter, maybe more EDM type stuff that people were into. Because heavy metal is not really on the radio. You don't hear it in a lot of soundtracks except for Doom. And I didn't expect it to work. And then I did like a Final Fantasy VII kind of Doom style mix. And that one, in terms of comparison to how many people listened to it, that one did far away better than anything else. And I was like, there might be something here. So then I went back and I tried another song and it did really well again. And then I changed my video format. It did really well again. And none of that stuff would have happened if I didn't have enough time to try a bunch of different styles. Then the one other thing that changed was I was about to switch again. The Doom style mixes started to do really well. And then I announced on my Twitter that I was going to do a bunch of these, what if X was in this style, but it wasn't Doom. It was just a bunch of different styles. And my friend Alex Mukala, the YouTuber,
he's awesome, by the way.
Said, yeah, I love him so much. He's such a wonderful person, very talented. And he said, no, you probably shouldn't switch. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, look, people have been in positions like this a lot and kind of stumbled because they couldn't nail down something. And the brand kind of recognition comes with time and repetition. And he was totally right. I just said, sure, I'll keep doing it a bunch of times and kind of look where things are now. I think that piece of advice was maybe the single best career advice I think I've ever gotten, which was don't jump around too much. Pick something and stick with it for a while. Give people a chance to understand what you're about. That was life-changing. I think that really applies to a lot of stuff. And you know what? It took some time, right? But it was the figuring out what has traction and then sticking with it and just actually sticking with it, that formula, I think is the right one if you want to grow an audience. I think if I were to try again from scratch, I would maybe approach it the same way.
Mm. So would you take Alex out to lunch and be like, "Thanks, buddy"?
Yeah, if I'm ever in Europe, I totally would. Yeah. There's got to be a situation where I'll get out there someday. I'm sure. Like, he's around at conferences and tour. I see I like fanboy a little bit when I see him meeting up with like Austin Wintory and some of the other like really cool composers. I'm like, oh man, I want to be there. It's so cool. These guys, everybody's so great and so nice.
Yeah. What do you think about all the AI technology that's being used with music? I mean, I know you've played around with Moises. I've played around with Moises. It's real cool.
Yeah.
But it's scary at the same time because you don't know where this technology is going to go.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's a lot of conversation around AI art too, and I think that one's maybe a more upfront version of the conversation. When it comes to AI tools like the stem splitting tools, like the Moises, and I use some other ones as well. I don't think there's anything wrong with those. I think it's really cool technology, and in fact, it enabled a lot of the stuff. Like without those tools, the mixes I did for Atomic Heart wouldn't exist. You need those types of tools to get pieces, get clean cuts of things that never existed before that you'll never be able to get otherwise. I think that's really cool. The AI conversation that people are having in both the music and the art world right now that I do think is worrisome is the one that is about creative concept. It's like, would you let an AI tool write a song for you? Would you let it write your article? Would you let it draw your entire, base painting of something, right? Like Midjourney can give you you can prompt it to do the whole thing and then you can touch it up and be like, it's mine now, right? And like, that's where people start to get really like, I don't know, because like the rest of us have been doing it from zero without any sort of intermediary steps for a long time. And it feels like it undermines like the work that we do. But I actually don't think it does. And it's that's kind of a wait and see type of thing. I actually don't feel threatened by AI. I don't know if that's something where, maybe there's a future where like, an AI tool is prompting me to do a podcast, but I don't think I would be interviewed by an AI anytime soon. I think like there's cool things, but it falls so short in areas where it matters right now. It's just cool, but I haven't seen it in music anyway, and specifically in music, I haven't seen it starting to be used in places that say like would put people out of a job. Not yet. I don't know if that'll happen, but I'm actually really curious what you think about that too, because I'm sure you've been thinking about this quite a bit.
Yeah, well, I find it very interesting. I mean, like everything, it's a tool, and I personally feel with any new technology, you have to be an adapter, or you have to learn to utilize it. If you try and fight it too much, then you just kind of end up like the dinosaur and you just go extinct. So I think you have to find a way to use it. I mean, I played around with it. I actually took Mick Gordon's Polymos track from Killer Instinct and used all the stems, and then I used it to make a little bit of a hip hop sample from it, which was cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But I mean, did you utilize that at all with the Atomic Heart soundtrack, or did they actually give you the stems?
No, that's what I used for the Atomic Heart soundtrack. They just had the original songs. I don't know if there are stems for any of those, but yeah, I had to separate that. Some folks on the soundtrack, it sounds like they didn't, but some folks did, and it's cool to see who did and who didn't, and how those songs end up. If you don't separate the stems, you're kind of working with the whole song, and so the way that you sample and the choices you make in the song become totally different. Makes me wonder if I didn't have those tools, like what would these covers even sound like? I have no idea.
Like the Arlekino remix you did, right? Which is originally a circus track, pretty much,
right?
Carnival type, and you turned it into like this metal type track, which is cool.
Yeah.
And I guess you only could do that because of the fact that you had the stems. But even when it separates it doesn't do it clearly, right? You have some phasing issues, and there can be like little muddy and clipping issues, can't there? So do you have to try and clean it up first before you utilize the sample?
Yeah, totally. There are some algorithms that will give you more vocal and give you a little bit of bleed as well. So instead of trying to deal with, say, phasing issues where you're losing whole parts of a word, or like the whole, I don't know, maybe a drum beat hits at the same time and it just sounds like the vocals just drop out for a sec. Instead of that, you end up getting the whole vocal and all the instruments and stuff sort of kind of floating in and out occasionally. And I actually prefer that because I can go in and clean that up much better because the information's all there. And in every single track, that was the case. Another thing that's cool about the AI tools is you often don't hear it in context, but when you separate out stems, sometimes you can pick up the weird, maybe like rough edges or mistakes that got made during the recording process, because you can hear the vocals, like especially some of the older tracks, they don't have a lot of compression and stuff on them in every take. So you can hear people singing with the microphone. They're kind of doing this with the mic. And that's just the recording. That's actually not like an issue with the stem splitter. It's like they just didn't, people are singing and they're getting into it and they're moving back and they're going over here. And you just have to deal with that, and for me, that's like kind of doing surgery on it and going in and compressing stuff and changing volumes. And I had to do a lot of kind of EQ tricks to make sure that everything sort of sounded consistent. Pop music is very flat, like the vocals are like that, where it's not, just a sausage. So it's not like that with some of the older tracks. And a big part of that process for every song was to sort of modernize the vocals and make them sound a little bit more like a regular pop track.
Yeah, because it's interesting, like say with metal, vocals don't tend to be right front and center, right? Say with like maybe pop music. So was that something you kept in mind when you were doing the different tracks? Like one that was more pop oriented as opposed to metal oriented, where you wanted maybe the guitars louder?
Yeah, I think it sort of depended. I did use some mixed references to listen to bands and stuff that I liked to see how they balance things. I was surprised at hearing some of those bands, noticing that the vocals were dropped so far back. I was like, maybe that's too much. Like, I had to pull them up forward. I did still get some feedback. We're talking about seeing the one negative comment in a sea of positive comments. I would still get occasionally feedback about vocals being too quiet. Somebody went on YouTube, they used the stem splitter and they remastered Arlekino. And it's just the same track with the vocals turned up like 6 dB. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like if you can't hear it, like that's cool. But I that wasn't the mix reference I used. I'm more of a metal oriented person where the vocals definitely sit. They kind of sit a little bit back and they're sort of a texture amongst everything else. And you can hear them, but they're not the most important thing. But then like the more poppy tracks, like Stoyat Devchanki, I brought those vocals up pretty far because that was more like an EDM style. So yeah, it sort of depended. And it's all to taste a little bit too. I think you start getting into like, what you think is best territory. There's no hard rule for any of that stuff really.
Yeah. So with your Doom-esque remixes, I suppose we'll call them, obviously I'm guessing your Patreon make a lot of the suggestions in terms of the tracks that you do.
Actually, they don't, because it's not
really.
The Patreon's mostly focused on music production. So
the
way that, so I do a lot of deep dives and I publish stems for all the songs. And then at higher tiers, I have a Discord that's patron only. And I've also invited a bunch of professional musicians and friends of mine into the server to sort of help, like if folks are, if I'm not around, but folks have questions, I've got kind of like people that I know sort of do lots of different genres, and we can all sort of enjoy all the types of music together, which is really great. I'm very active in there, and I think that's right now anyway. It's that, and then sadly I haven't had as much time as I used to, but there was like a software component as well, where at the beginning when I was working on the Argent compressor and I was doing some of those the sample packs and stuff, all those folks in Patreon get early access or even beta access to things. So that has been good. But yeah, I'd say it's music production oriented, and the vast majority of the stuff that I talk about with patrons has been about music, listening to their music or sharing ideas or things like that.
Right. So how do you decide what remixes to do when you do them?
I will ask the community sometimes. I also tend to know like what people want to hear. I get a lot of comments on YouTube, like the Dark Souls and the Bloodborne and the Elden Ring covers were things that people just kept commenting over and over and over again. And usually the way that it goes is like, I'll just see the volume of stuff and I'll go, if people are asking that much, then maybe I should vet this. And then what I'll do is I'll go in and be like, how many people are playing the game? Does the soundtrack already have a lot of listeners? Do people know the songs? Like there's older Nintendo stuff that I think people have a lot of nostalgic feelings for. But it turns out the audience is extremely small, and I would want to do those, but at the same time, like if I can only do at this point, I don't know, maybe one remix a month now, and I've only got 12 to pick. Like I have to sort of pick the ones I know that will get some traction. I don't want to, I'm not doing like pop music. I'm not just like going for the biggest numbers, but I want to do things that I think there will be an audience for. Because I've seen when I've seen over, especially last year, I did a few that I knew had a smaller audience and people really liked the song, but just everything across the board, it just didn't really, it was the small audience liked it and that was it. And I was like, well, there's not really an opportunity for me to share with the wider audience. People either listen or they don't. And so, I pick things that I think people have at least heard of or think about on a regular basis. I want to make it like, even if you're not, for me, I wasn't playing Elden Ring, but I knew enough about it to be like, even I enjoy this. I know the music a little bit. I know, you know what I mean? So there's some factors like that go into it. It's like a little vetting process that I have internally. I have a big list of ideas.
It's really interesting as well because you don't know what the YouTube algorithm does in terms of how it suggests your music, right, on the front page. So that's right. Another thing. Yeah. I mean, one of my personal favorites by you is the Super Metroid Ridley one that you did. Yeah. Because I saw on your Twitter. So is this actually true that you got the idea from playing Smash Brothers? Is that what caused you to have idea? Because I saw that there's a picture there where you've got the Doomslayer and Ridley and you're like, idea.
Actually, other way around. That one, so there was supposed to be a Super Smash Brothers style cover. There was supposed to be. And I was working with somebody who was modding Smash Brothers to put Doomguy in the game. And that's what you see is a picture of that. Now, having Ridley in there was coincidental. That was like not what the idea was. I was teasing this idea of doing the Super Smash Brothers thing and just sort of waiting on the other creator to finish that work. Sadly, it fell to the wayside. There was a bunch of other things that happened that sort of stopped that in its tracks. But the idea would have been cool. And like the Skyrim cover that I did, being able to show it off with an actual mod in the game, I think is like really, really cool. And that would have been, to do the video, we were actually going to do like a little bit of an advertisement for this mod. And I would like write the music for the mod too. So it would sort of be like a win-win. It just never worked out, which is a bummer, but it would have been really sick.
Because how long did that mod take to do? Well, because I saw the video. I know what video you're talking about.
It would have taken a long time. By the time he had been working on it for a little while. Yeah. Sadly, some unfortunate events happened around that mod in particular. So it is what it is. But I don't know if they're still doing stuff. They might still be. I could send you a link to the creator. You can see.
Yep.
I don't know if you're an avid Smash player at all, but.
Oh yeah, I am. Yeah. So.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm probably not on the level of some of these elite people that play online. Freaks of nature. They
not
are.
At all.
Yeah. Because do you work in conjunction with a team, right? You must have a group of people that you work with when you're doing these covers. Like, does somebody help with the editing or the artwork and stuff like that?
Yeah. So at first it was just me and the artist Kina, and then as I kind of found that things were getting a little more traction, I had a little bit of budget to start working with an editor who is a good friend of mine. His name is Dan, also known as Space Bear. He works with the Game Grumps guys quite a bit, and he's a fantastic editor. And so now it's kind of like us three. We have a little separate Discord chat, and we sort of do all the evil planning there. And it's been good. I think it's a consistent process, and both of them are just wonderful people to work with, and really, really amazing at their crafts. And I couldn't ask for a better team. I don't know what YouTubers' typical team size is for people who do content like this. I can't imagine it's a lot of people. Like, we can get a lot done, just the three of us. But some gaming channels, maybe there's more people that gather footage or things like that. I don't really know that part of the process yet.
Yeah. It just actually dawned on me because you're working on Viscerafest and Atomic Heart, and you're still managing your channel and trying to do all the stuff in Discord, and I suppose you're still doing the remix stuff at the same time. So you're trying to manage all that stuff at the same time. Is that what was happening, or did you delegate that to somebody?
No, I mean, some of what happens is stuff falls to the wayside. So as things got really busy with Atomic Heart and with Viscerafest, I found myself being in Discord chat less, or I found myself not making a YouTube video for 4 or 5 months, right? So that stuff can happen. And that's the limits of being a single person. Like uh, the channel is all of these things can really only exist in their current state with me being there. And I just have to like choose what I think is important at what time. And, you know, if for some reason YouTube ends up being less of an important thing for me, that doesn't mean that people will have to leave. It doesn't mean I'm done with it, but it just means I have to set new expectations. Like, hey, I'm going to be uploading when I can, and as opposed to every week or something like that. So even now it's starting to slow down quite a bit, but it is what it is.
Because you've mentioned previously that you would like to conceptualize doing, say, audio software with a team, right? As opposed to just being a creative person.
Totally.
Yeah. So is that something
that stuff,
you kind of have in the pipeline, or is it just an idea that's in the back of your head that you'll do at some point?
Yeah, it's nothing that I've like really done yet. I mean, I'd say for like one example, a small time example of this is like the Argent compressor, where, you know, it was myself and the developer, and then a third person to kind of be quality control and test in different scenarios. And that was a very typical situation to when I used to work in tech, like as a product manager. That was like, you know, I would be like the voice of the customer, and then, you know, the developer would make the changes, and then we'd bring it in and we'd show it to other folks who are composers and would get feedback. And it was very familiar and it worked out great. And I can do that all day long. You know, if it came down to it, like if music never really worked out for the best, but I found myself making, I don't know, drum distortion for the rest of my life, like I could do that. Like it, you know, like it's a good time, and I understand the space, and I really like technology, and maybe I'll get back into coding a little bit. Like, I don't know, it could be cool, but I don't do that much right now.
Yeah. Are you quite structured in terms of routine? Like, do you set out your day, or do you have a bit more of a more spontaneity in terms of how you do stuff?
I am structured in terms of I'm good at keeping to a calendar, but I do like to work in a black box, because if a manager for somewhere actually saw what I do on a day-to-day basis in terms of when I choose to do things, what time of day and or night I choose to do things, they'd be like, this person has no concept of time. And it's true. Like, you know, when I'm in that flow state, I just am in that flow state. And but stuff gets done. And I think that's the most important stuff. Like, you know, I'm getting things, I can deliver stuff in a timely manner. And I'm not in terms of how I get there, I think it's less important. You know, I hope nobody should set up a camera in my apartment and watch me decide to open a session at 2 a.m. You know, there's a lot of judgment there.
Really? Do you sometimes do that?
I did a little bit last night. Yeah. You know, if I can't sleep or something like that, I'll just be like, what do I need to do? Whatever. I'll just go and work on something. There's always something going on that I could be working on. But yeah, I mean, it screws up. I don't work a day job. I don't work a 9 to 5, right? I'm
no,
weird.
It's all over the place, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like, what is time? Like it does, I don't know. It's like, it just matters that things happen, you know, and that's it. Except for like getting to meetings, like, you know, I don't ever want to get to the point where doing a 1 p.m. podcast becomes a challenge that I can't get out of bed. Like that would be bad news. But like, besides that, you know, it doesn't really matter, I think.
So what happens if you have an idea? Let's say you have a musical idea, you've got some melody that's just come in your head, or a riff or something, and you're nowhere near your computer. You're at McDonald's or something. I don't know if you're at McDonald's, but just hypothetically, do you have something? Do you record something in your phone, or you just what do you do?
Yeah, sometimes it'll be a phone thing. Sometimes I'll make a note. But you know what? Actually, a lot of times I don't record it. It's really strange. Like I do most of my work in the work time. Like when I'm in my session, like the ideas will happen, and I can sit down, and I've gotten pretty good at finding ways to get myself back into that creative state when a project starts. Or sometimes like it never leaves my head. Like it's not about ideas popping into my head when I'm at McDonald's. It's about the fact that I've been looping the song in my head since before I left for McDonald's, you know, and it never goes away. So by the time I'm back, I'm already there, you know, like I get hyper focused, and it's like it becomes kind of all encompassing when I'm in like a session, when I have a day that I'm kind of working on something. And so I don't know, it just sort of spins in my head. I'm not I don't have a phone full of ideas like Taylor Swift. It's just when I'm in the session, it happens. And that's how it works.
So how do you combat things that could disrupt your day? Like say ear fatigue, that's one thing. Obviously you need to take breaks, or writer's block. How do you deal with these type of problems?
Yeah, ear fatigue, pretty normal problem for me. I just have to. A lot of times, what will happen is like I can tell when I have ear fatigue, and I know that things are are harder to hear, especially after, I don't know, 8 hours of just listening to the same thing over and over again. Most of that is just spacing things out on a day-to-day, like being like, I need to come back tomorrow. I need to come back in 2 days and listen again. Like that's a pretty easy solution. And then it clears my mind in a lot of other things. I stop focusing on that one thing, that one snare drum or whatever I've been editing for, 2 hours. And in terms of writer's block, which I have run into before, what I found mostly is that the writer's block for me doesn't come from a lack of ideas. It comes from a lack of interest. I find myself like, if I'm writing things and I get no like dopamine response from the things I'm writing, then I have writer's block. But a lot of it, I feel like it becomes alleviated when I sleep better and when I listen to other music and when I do other things, and I can get excited about stuff, about other songs. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I can use that, right? Like it's just, I think a lot of folks who do creative work, we're working with our emotions as our guide because there's not like a hard and fast rule for anything. But if you're just not excited about anything, nothing sounds good and you don't want to write anything. So I try to find reasons to be excited about music, and try to kind of get into new things and maybe revitalize my interest in some older things I haven't visited in a while, just to get back into it. Like, I don't know, it's a mental state. It's a weird form of meditation in a way. I guess that's the best way I could put it.
Yeah, because you mentioned you sometimes can't sleep. So are you still, because you had a problem with insomnia, didn't you, at one point?
Yeah. I still do. It's more like, when I fall asleep is the hardest part. It's not that I can't sleep sometimes. It's like, even last night, like I just couldn't find a reason to be tired. And I would lay down and I'd just be like, but I still want to finish up this one thing, or I'd listen to a song that I'm working on. I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to sleep until I edit this, and this, and I, that happens a lot, I'm getting better at it. I think that's maybe a lot, my lack of routine kind of on a day-to-day basis, can contribute to sleeping worse. But I don't know. It's just something I just figure out. Like, as long as I'm sleeping enough. If I'm tired, that's bad. But if I'm sleeping weird hours, that's not as bad. It's just strange. And I can't hang out with anybody because everybody's asleep all the time.
Yeah. But I suppose it comes with the territory, right? Because you can't really, routine doesn't determine creativity or inspiration. So,
right.
You kind of just have to do it.
Yeah, it's weird though. The band, maybe this is a dated reference because I remember listening to these guys like a decade ago, but No Dada Life.
How old are they?
The two. Well, they're probably in their late 30s or 40s now. I mean, they've been around. I remember, they were like 2010. They were making like house music.
Right.
And they put out a plugin. They put a couple, Endless Smile and the Sausage Fattener were their two big plugins. And I remember watching an interview with them, and they was talking about routine. And one of the things that they talked about was going to the studio, work a 9 to 5. Don't worry about overdoing it. It's not, the consistency is the most important part. And I think that was good advice. I think about that a lot. Regardless of my weird timing, I'm not working a 9 to 5 specifically, but the consistency is important. Getting into the studio, sitting down and doing it every day. You're going to get more or less per day, but on average, you'll still be able to make music. You're not going to get stuck because you're coming back to it and you're getting back into the rhythm every single day. I think that's like better and more boring advice than any creative writing hack or anything like that. It's just show up and do it,
Yeah. I mean, it's probably would work better if you're a family oriented person or you've got kids.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you do or not, but yeah.
No, if I had even a dog, I think my schedule would be very regimented. And you're like, I actually do miss working in an office. I had to show up at a particular time of day, and my schedule sort of became that. If I had to show up at 9, I would be there at 9, and I'd be tired, and I'd go to bed, and I'd be there at 9 the next day. And I do miss the external input needing to be places at certain times on a regular basis does help structure wise. Having to care for people, having to care for pets, things like that. It can help with a routine. I'm sure that'll change. Maybe I should get a dog. Maybe this is the whole point of this. This is the lesson I'm learning in this podcast.
Maybe. In regards to office work though, like now I imagine back then you would have had to deal with traffic issues, because if you're just working, I'm guessing you work out of your house, right? That's where you do most of your music, so you don't have to
nowadays
so you don't have to travel, so therefore you have more time, so therefore you're able to utilize it more effectively as opposed to sitting in traffic for like, I don't know, 2 hours or whatever you were doing back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I talk to folks, a lot of folks, patrons and not patrons, who do music as a part-time thing. They have a day job and they come home and they work on music for a couple of hours. And if I ever get questions like, wow, how did you do this so fast? Like, it takes me so long to work on music and stuff. I'm like, well, don't underestimate how much time you don't have on a day-to-day basis because you do it part-time. Like, that's just the nature of it. And when I was working in a day job and doing music part-time, I always felt like I just never had enough time to really pump out music and get good. I felt like I was always kind of like doing it for an hour at a time or 2 hours at a time, kind of grasping at it. Or I was really tired because I would double up, burn the candle at both ends, work all night on something and then try to show up the next day at work, even though I didn't, I sacrificed sleep for it. And I don't think that's good either. It's a really tough position to be in. And like, I got lucky, but I totally understand when people feel frustrated by that. So, there are things like I'd say time is, even nowadays doing this full time, time is the hardest thing for me. If there were two of me and if I could double the amount of time in a day, I think I would be happy, but that's just not how life is. So, cutting down on things like being able to drive, being able to be closer to your office, for example, and, or walking, not having to drive if you're lucky enough to do that. All those little things do improve quality of life. They do improve creativity. They improve your ability to do more music if that's what you want to be doing, to practice your instrument or do something else entirely, to watch TV if you don't have enough time to do that. Like there's there's a lot there. And there's a whole commentary about living in the United States and how it's a car oriented country and all that stuff too. But like, we don't have to talk about that. I think it's hard for people. Like, there's more walkable places to live, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to a game developer who used to work at Naughty Dog, and he said that some of his colleagues were commuting in LA 2.5 hours one way, some of them, which is insane. That is insane. That is not good mentally. So there'll be millions of people who do that on a day-to-day basis, and then somehow have to come home and do music. It's crazy. But
you can't.
Yeah. Do you, if you're watching a movie, if you're just trying to relax and something, do you feel guilty sometimes that you should be doing more music?
Yeah, it's a story of my life.
Yeah.
I even recently, I just got the Metroid Prime remastered.
Nice.
Right. Great game. And I have been trying to sit down and play it. And yes, that will happen to me. I'll sit down and I'll start playing and I'll go, is this a good use of my time? Yes, it is, Geoff. Stop. Like it is. Just let yourself play a video game. There's a word for it. It's called workaholism. Like that's what I have, and I know where it comes from, and I'm trying to combat it. Like it's not a healthy lifestyle to be a workaholic, and giving yourself permission to do other things is like a big challenge with that. And so I'm trying to find ways to do that. But yeah, it happens all the time. Basically, anything that's unresolved, any project that hasn't been fully finished, fully submitted, people don't need something from me. It's just the only thing that's going on in my head. Like I have to clear my plate completely to feel like I'm allowed to take a vacation. And that's just not the nature of being a contract worker like I am, a musician. There's always something else to do. So I'm trying to reframe that. I'm sort of doing self-therapy and, remembering what an old therapist who I did talk to about this had said. So just trying to find new tools and new ways to allow myself to do things. Yeah. It's challenging.
The irony of what you say with regards to the whole video game thing and feeling guilty, because I've pretty much feel the same. I think how I've tried to alleviate it is I've tried to do streaming. Like I'll do a live stream, play a game, because then I kind of feel like interacting with the community. It's not as bad. You're helping to build your channel, I suppose, at the same time. So therefore, in my head, it feels like work. So I don't know. Have
Yeah.
you tried different instances to try and trick your brain to think that you're working?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Now, that's maybe another thing is like, should I be publicly facing all the time? You know, like I think about the streaming part and I'm like, do I want people to watch me play? Like, what is my problem here? And, you know, but actually, you know, it wouldn't be a bad idea to do something like that. But yeah, it's like when you're a workaholic, if you're a workaholic, the solution is obviously, well, I think anyway, is not necessarily to find ways to work more, you know, like to find ways to turn the play into work. Like there's like from anyway, that's like for me, because like there's only so many, I've already packed it full of work. So like, you know, the idea is to like cut it back a little bit. I don't know, like there's something to explore there for sure. And I'm not great at streaming. I'm not good at live stuff. I guess. Did I tell you the first stream I ever did on YouTube? I marked it as. It is.
Yeah.
The first stream I ever did on YouTube, I marked it as "This is for kids." I didn't even notice I did that. Like, people were like, "You're showing up next to like Yo Gabba Gabba." Like, what? This is. Is it? Didn't even know I was on stream for like the first 2 minutes. Like, I'm not good at this yet.
Oh, practice makes perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So then what do you do for downtime? What do you do to try and de-stress?
Yeah. I have friends in town, so I like to go see friends of mine, and a couple of them are really great cooks, so that's been nice.
Nice.
Go and they're putting, you know, little dinner parties together and stuff like that. Sometimes I see live music in town. Boston actually is a great town for lots of live music. There's very little heavy metal and game music stuff around here. Surprisingly, actually, because Boston was known for heavy metal for a while, but not that much. But I'll catch a lot of like country music or like, you know, bluegrass or folk music. Tons of that around here. Jazz, tons of jazz, because we have a music school here. So that's things to do. I'm just finding reasons to get out of the house. When you work and live in one place, like every time outside is cherished.
Yeah,
you know?
Wouldn't you get like cabin fever almost when your personal and your work are intertwined all in one place?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the during like the COVID lockdowns, that was a huge problem, you know, like because there was no reason for me to leave for months at a time, right? And like now that I'm working in a job where my work and my home are in the same place, it's like, did I ever stop living in the COVID lockdown scenario, you know? And so I'm finding reasons, because I don't have to go to an office or go anywhere. I have to now make reasons to leave the house and go do things. And it's weird to think about that, because for a lot of my life and a lot of people's lives, that isn't really a thing. You got places to go because people need you for stuff. And it's like, what if every possible thing, every reason you left the house was a choice? And I'm like, I'm realizing I choose not to leave the house a lot because of that, you know? It's just, these are things I never thought I'd have to think about, you know? And I'm in my early 30s, and it's like, for 30 years, I never had to think about this. It's just very weird. It's a weird lifestyle.
A good lifestyle, though. I think a lot of people probably covet for a lifestyle like that.
Oh yeah, it's definitely it's freeing, but there are so many things you don't realize you have to now think about when you when you work for yourself. If you've never worked for yourself, this is like anybody who just kind of runs a business on your own. Time management becomes a really weird thing, because everything you do is your choice, and you know, you making money is your choice, and everything. But you know, it comes with trade-offs. It comes with being nervous about different things. So
final question before I let you go. But
sure.
Where do you see the Argent Metal scene evolving over the next decade, I suppose? Because it's in its infancy still.
Yeah, it is. So I think there's still a lot of room. I think the biggest thing where it stands out is even nowadays when I listen to new bands and kind of metal projects, there is a clear emphasis on the guitar and drums and bass, like the playing part of it, right? And the electronic production is always sort of bucketed into like this post-production area. And there's not a lot of kind of tight blend, right? There's a couple of bands. I mean, like I know Three Teeth does a bunch of stuff like this, and we're sort of getting into like the industrial territory, and the where the synthesizers are like a core part of the song, and the sound production and the sound design is like it adds a very, like, if you removed it, the song would not be the same. And if people cover it without those parts, the song wouldn't be the same. And we're not quite there yet, but I think that's where Argent Metal lives, right? A good example of this is I saw someone cover one of the songs I did for Atomic Heart, one of the originals, and they mostly didn't do the sound design stuff. And I was like, this song sounds totally different now. Like it's a cover, yeah, but like there were like key parts of that song that I realized kind of after the fact were designed into the song. They weren't part of the playing. They were like a sound effect that was meant to continue the melody, but it wasn't a playable part. And that is what I think the difference is. It's a perfect blend between electronic and metal music in the metal world. It's not dance music. And I think we'll see more of that. It seems like people lean one way or the other. They tend to be very electronic people or very guitar, bass, drums people, but never right in the middle. And I want to hear a ton more of that. I think there's a meeting where we'll create a whole new genre of things. There's tools. The tools are few and far between right now, but as we get more tools, production tools and interfaces and playable instrument MIDI type things, I think this will get easier for people. It's just not very accessible right now. It's still hard. It's a long process, a lot of sound design, a lot of skills needed all at once. But I think we're slowly but surely getting to the point where it's becoming accessible, and then we'll start to get a whole new wave of really awesome kind of electronified metal that nobody's ever really heard before. So stuff that, Doom was the first good example of it, but I know it is bigger than Doom. I know it lives in a world where Doom is one small part of a bigger movement. I am 100% sure of that. So.
Mick must be familiar with your stuff, surely.
He's seen it, yeah, for sure.
Okay. So has he commented on it, or what does he think? Do you know?
He only commented on it one time, and he asked me to cover. Well, it was mostly probably a joke. Asked me to cover the Crazy Bus song, and I assumed it was the atonal one that has no melody or whatever. Immediately turned that into a video because I thought that was a really funny thing to do. But I totally understand if he saw me do that and decided never to comment again, because you know what I mean? Like, because that's the thing is the audience sees the comment immediately becomes the first thing everybody sees because everybody sees him comment. And then the internet wants to see me do something about that. And like, that's how the internet works. But
maybe he knew that and he did that intentionally. Just to mess with you, maybe. I don't know.
I may never know. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's possible. Yeah, I definitely I don't take myself very seriously on the internet. The internet is a weird place.
It is
full of unique and interesting people and who love being silly and ridiculous and whatever. And I think it's great. But so who knows? I don't know. But I'm sure he's seen it. I don't know. We don't really chat that much, so
if I chat to him again, I might ask him. I'll ask him for you.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I don't know. Do you have any idea when Volume 2 of the soundtrack's coming out?
No, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. Because it's weird, because it's hard to know who worked on what, because obviously there was so many musicians involved, and Mick did the soundtrack. But then I still can't quite, because I'm like, did Mick do this, or did someone else do it that's similar to Mick? Like, you don't want to just assume that Mick just did everything that was. Because I listened to the whole soundtrack like a day or two. It's like 4 hours or however long it is. Because someone's ripped it now and put it on YouTube. And I listened to the whole thing, and I was thinking, okay, so I think this is Mick. I think Mick did this. But then you don't know. Yeah, you don't really know. So, and he wasn't involved at all in Volume 1. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of this was a surprise to me too. I was learning about this on the same day as everybody else, seeing how things were packaged up, also hearing game rips, all that stuff was new to me. And I know that a large amount of the music, so what's his name, Andrei Bugrov, also the audio director, has done a bunch of music as well. So I imagine what we'll see, assuming there is a Volume 2, I don't know why there wouldn't be, we'll probably see a good chunk of music done by him. But he's been on the project for a long time. He was, one of the core team members. So we'll probably see that. And then, the rest is, I guess, speculation. I listen to music and I go, I'm guessing this is or isn't a certain artist because I have a sense of maybe what their styles are and whatever, but you can't be sure until they publish the final list. So, who knows? I am really curious if they've finished ripping all the music out, because I've heard a lot of it already, but like, is that all of it? Because that, I want to be surprised, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I get requests all the time to get Mick back on. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, do I wait for volume 2? Do I reach out to him now? Like, when do I reach out to him?
Yeah.
He might not even reply. Who knows? You never know. But anyway.
It's worth a try. And you're talking about, you got to get the poster signed anyway. So you got 2 reasons to.
Yeah. Got to get him to sign it. But this has been cool, man. This has been cool talking to you. I mean, I'm one of those internet lurkers, so I've been watching you for quite a while. I don't really comment much, but I've been watching you for a while, and it's, as I said earlier at the beginning, like it's been cool watching your rise, and now that you're actually working on games as well. So I'm really interested to see where your career goes from here, because it's happened so fast, like crazy fast.
Right. It's not going to continue at that clip. I mean, it's a blip. It's, now we're getting to the plateau and the getting used to it kind of thing. But yeah, it's, I really, even if you're not commenting, I appreciate that you've been watching the stuff and that you're interested in the stuff that I'm doing. I was pleasantly surprised by a lot of the questions that you brought up in this interview, because I was like, hey, I think I've seen some of the other interviews and some of the other stuff. Really, I mean, your research is great. So I really enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, appreciate it. I mean, you do a lot of research, right? When you're doing your deep dives before you do, because you have the track that you release, and then you've got all the research and the stuff beforehand, which is really cool, right? Because you obviously do deep dives. So it all helps. But this has been cool, man. And I suppose best place to follow you, what, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube? You're on pretty much everything, aren't you?
Yeah, content is YouTube. I do have an Instagram and a Twitter, and I'm pretty active on there. I did mention a Discord, but that's Patreon only. But you're more than welcome to join if that's something you're interested in. And I'm very active in there. That's sort of like my main, if you want to ask me a question, like I'm on the computer. So it's those places. And I don't think there is a TikTok, but I don't look at it, so don't worry about it. And,
it'll probably be banned soon anyway, so you won't have to worry.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, it's not a good investment. Just those: Twitter, Instagram, good place to start.
Cool. All right. Well, that is the show, everyone. Make sure you share, like, and subscribe. And until next time, stay safe.